Welcome to Monday's devotions. We're in Exodus chapter 13 today. So let's read from verse 1. The Lord said to Moses, "Consecrate to me all the firstborn, whatever is the first to open the womb among the people of Israel, both of man and of beast, is mine." Then Moses said to the people, "Remember this day in which you came out from Egypt, out of the house of slavery. For by a strong hand the Lord brought you out from this place. No leavened bread shall be eaten. Today in the month of Abib you are going out. And when the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, which he swore to your fathers to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey, you shall keep this service in this month. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and on the seventh day there shall be a feast of the Lord. Unleavened bread shall be eaten for 7 days, no leavened bread shall be seen with you, and no leaven shall be seen with you in all your territory. You shall tell your son on that day, it is because of what the Lord did when I came out of Egypt." Amen. The Lord tells Moses of how the firstborn of Israel are to be consecrated to him in verses 1 to 2. And then Moses tells the people later on in verse 11 and 6 more about this, along with a reminder to keep the feast of unleavened bread in verses 3 to 10. When they would enter the promised land, which would have such tremendous richness, the Israelites are to deny themselves for 7 days by eating unleavened bread. And then they were to do this every year. And it was a reminder of how God had delivered them from times of great hardship, from times when they had no privileges and times when life was so difficult for them. And so this was to be an annual reminder of what they were rescued from. This was an important way of teaching the future generations through this feast of unleavened bread. And it's very easy for people to forget God's goodness, and this would help them by this annual reminder. You know, God has given certain things as well to help us to remember. The Sabbath day is a weekly reminder to point to God's provision and peace and rest. The Lord's Supper is a reminder as well of what God has done for us. And it's a mixture of reminding us of how we have been rescued, what we have been rescued from, and how at the same time we have to consecrate ourselves to the Lord. And you know, it's so important if you're a Christian that you understand you've been rescued from a life of sin. So important you remember that so that you live this new life and don't live in the life of sin. But it's also important for your humility. There's a friend of mine I ministered with a number of years ago. He talked about people who had become a wee bit uppity of themselves. He says they forgot the bowl that they had been baked in. And sometimes there's people who come from particularly lowly backgrounds, were some of the people who were a wee bit stuck up, as we would say. The Christian should never be stuck up. The Christian should be someone who remembers that they have been saved from their sin by the grace of God. The consecration of the firstborn of all the animals and the people was to be a reminder too of the Lord and how he delivered them from Egypt through the death of the firstborn in that land, and how through the Passover, the blood on the doorposts and so forth, they were rescued. It was a pointing back to what God had done to rescue them, and a pointing forward to how God would rescue them through the death of his firstborn. Isn't that a tremendous picture there? I wonder, as the Lord sent the angel of death through Egypt and killing the firstborn of every household of the Egyptians, how the Lord was feeling, what the Lord was thinking. Because it was a pointing forward to the only way that we can be rescued from the slavery of sin is through the death of God's firstborn. So we must never forget that. And we think of communion, taking the bread and the wine. It's just reminding us of what Jesus has done. And as we take that bread and wine, which speaks of the broken body and shed blood, it should be a time of consecration. And so we see here that in the Feast of Unleavened Bread and also in the firstborn and the consecrating the firstborn, it's a reminder and a consecration. You are reminded of what God has done for you in order that you would freshly commit yourself to the Lord in obedience, in faith, in service. Are you consecrated to the Lord? There's no hymn, take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to thee. That's not language we use today, but we need to be so committed to the Lord, so devoted to the Lord. Why? Because that is what he deserves. In the great hymn, When I Survey, it talks about if the whole realm of nature, if it was mine, that'll be an offering far too small. There's nothing that we can give the Lord that would be enough because of what he's done. He calls upon us just to give ourselves as a thank offering for his goodness to us. May God give us the grace to be so devoted. Amen.